CBC News continues this morning with our ongoing series Learning Curve and the focus on the impact the pandemic has had on students. What's being done to help them get back on track academically? We're talking about assessments and exams this morning with our education reporter, Deanna Sumanek-Johnson. Deanna, I know you've been hearing from students and from parents and teachers and experts too. There were none or hardly any exams during the pandemic. Tell me a little bit about what people are saying and the concerns they have about that.
Absolutely, Heather. So for the last really 2.5 years, with schools pivoting from virtual to back in person, there's been very few traditional exams. Only this school year, 2021-2022, did kids start having actual exams. And then when we're talking about standardized provincial testing, like the EQAO here in Ontario, many students have just had a chance to have it now, this spring. So what we heard from students and parents are many concerns, including students are just out of practice. We all know that those tests and exams can be very nerve-wracking. I can tell you, I can still vividly recall my clammy fingers as they put you into the gym room and you have only so much time to write that test. So those students have not had that practice for a long time now. And this is particularly concerning if they're heading into their final year of high school or into university, that they've lost the muscle, so to speak, for doing these tests. Then I've heard from parents of children who have had some learning challenges or learning disabilities that were not properly diagnosed or noticed because there were no tests. So again, parents are saying this was lost time and now this learning gap has augmented. And finally, some experts are worried about what does this mean on a broader level, from a societal level. Are we aware of where students are at and what kind of an impact all those school closures, movements, and pivoting from online to in-person have had? We got a chance to speak to Kelly Gallagher-Mackay. She's an assistant professor in liberal arts at Wilfrid Laurier University. Here's what she had to say about that.
There's a famous, it might even be a cliche by now, no data, no problem, no solution. We have no data. We've under-responded to the problem of pandemic learning impacts. And I think we've been very slow on the solution side.
And she thinks that as imperfect as they are, that some standardized tests are really helpful in just giving us those diagnostics of where students are at right now. Heather.
But not everyone shares that view, that those kinds of tests that we had, that we remember, that's the good idea for kids right now. What are some of the arguments against it, Deanna?
Well, there were actually controversies around standardized testing like the EQAO even before the pandemic. Some people were saying that it really, they disproportionately, basically the students from low-income or marginalized communities tend to not do as well at them, and that they're an unfair assessment, an unfair glimpse of how much a student actually knows. And we know that when we spoke to students this time around, many of them have said it's really unfair to put us through these tests right now after the enormous stress and disruption we have had over the last 2.5 years. And finally, I think that many parents, and there are educational thinkers as well, there's a whole stream of thought in educational philosophy that says, maybe these tests that you and I have had as kids and that generations of people have had are not the best way of really getting a holistic glimpse into how much a student knows. Everything from, verbal assessments, one-on-one assessments with teachers. There are certainly many alternatives that some experts and some students would like us to look into.
Thank you, Deanna. Deanna Sumanek-Johnson with us in studio today. And if you'd like to learn more about this, because obviously big impact on the Canadian families and Canadian kids, Deanna's Learning Curve series continues online at CBCNews.ca. And she'll have a report tonight on the National, 9 p.m. Eastern on CBC News Network and 10 p.m. local on CBC Television.